we'll get started. Thanks for joining us all here today. We're very excited to talk to you all a little bit about what we have been working on together over the last couple of years as we've been working to bring the new GOBI to life. I'm here with a couple of my partners in this process. We have been working together again over the last 2 years as we've been designing and starting to develop Mosaic, which is our new books ordering platform. I am Caroline Zappasodi. I'm the Vice President of Product Management for EBSCO Books. And I've been with EBSCO since 2013, most recently focused on bringing this new collection development and acquisition platform to life. I'll let my panelists, friends, and introduce themselves to you.
Morag, no. We were having the debate earlier. It's like, do we stand? Do we sit? So hopefully everybody can hear me. We don't have mics either. Great. I'm Morag Stewart. I am an acquisitions librarian as well as a classics librarian at the University of Washington.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Beth Carmichael. I'm the acquisitions and cataloging assistant at Gettysburg College, which is a small liberal arts college in rural South Central Pennsylvania. Only about 2,400 students. A little bit different perspective from a small school.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Damon Campbell. I am the acquisitions librarian for the University of Morgan Libraries. I've been here for about 10 years. I manage a staff of 3 full-timers, and I basically try to make sure things run smoothly and stay out of the way otherwise.
Can everyone hear panelists okay? Okay. All right, so we'll project as much as we can. So just a little overview of the project. So when we first started conceiving of this project around 2020, there were a lot of changes that were happening in our world. And we realized pretty quickly that we would have to make some significant changes to be able to adapt and respond to the needs of libraries and our partners, the needs of the market in general, much faster. We've been sort of struggling with some aging technology, and it was realized pretty rapidly that we needed to build an entirely new platform in order to support the change that was needed. At the time, there were a couple of major sort of factors driving our decisions. So there was a lot happening with digital books at the time. So format preferences, which you all know, were changing significantly and really flipped almost completely between 2018 and 21. And that's largely persisted since. There's also sort of increased focus on technology and interoperability and a significant desire from libraries to see sort of increased interoperability between products and services. And that was increasingly driving decisions that were being made, librarians looking for more efficiency there. There was a lot of consolidation and platforms that were sort of pushing for increased workflow optimization, and that the demand for that from libraries. And then ease of use of user interfaces was really coming more to the forefront, and the expectation that UIs were easy for everyone to use, and that could be sort of ease of use for those who are new to using a product, a platform. Ease of use for those who've been using it for a long time and wanting increased efficiency, and also ease of use for anyone and everyone regardless of their sort of abilities, what they're coming to the table with. So those were some of the key things that were on our mind when we were putting together sort of the early ideas for building this new platform. From a vendor perspective, the reason for why we put together this Innovation Partner Program was because we understood that our success would be very tied to our interaction with the users, the people who are actually using our platform. And without that we would really be designing and developing in a vacuum. And that's not what we wanted to, right? We wanted to ensure that as we were making decisions, that those decisions along the way were informed by the folks who are actually using our products, have experience with GOBI, and based on what they're looking for going forward. So that's from a vendor perspective. For our innovation partner libraries, for Morag, Beth, and Damon, would you share a little bit about what really drove you to get involved in the project and what needs specifically you were looking for this project to solve for your libraries?
Let me go first this time.
Go ahead.
So I'm relatively new to my position in Gettysburg. I've only been there about 4 years. But my colleagues have been there for a much longer time and have a long history of partnering with EBSCO in particular regarding GOBI. And so they've always emphasized how important these partnerships were. That vendors are really important collaborators for us, especially coming from a smaller school. So when EBSCO reached out to my colleagues, we were all eager to participate. There have been 3 of us who've been active in all different parts of the program. And since I'm relatively new, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I didn't know how much feedback we'd be giving, how it might be taken or used. And so I didn't really approach it with a very specific need or goal. But at about the same time that we got involved, Gettysburg developed a new purchasing policy for digital course materials. Prices of textbooks going up. This was part of the whole library's effort to reduce student costs. And so our searching goals and our ordering needs really changed a little bit. The cost, preferred vendor, and licensing, I mean, they were all important, but our priorities shifted a little bit when ordering for classes as opposed to general collection. So partnering with GOBI EBSCO has been a really great coincidence for me, because as I'm thinking through my workflows and the new things that I need to focus on, it's been an opportunity to reflect on my work and then give feedback on things that I do really every day.
So I and my staff are all long-term GOBI users. We have something like a combined total of 60 years of GOBI experience. And in that amount of time, you find out some things that work really well about a system, but you also find some things that can be improved. And I want to stop here and say that GOBI is an excellent system. It's just that over that time, you discover some things that can be improved. So when we got the opportunity to participate in this program, we really did see it as an opportunity to get in and sort of guide development in a way that address our existing and our emerging needs. And it seems that that's been the case so far.
Having gone first, University of Washington, big state school. When we were thinking about participating in the program, it was kind of one of our big goals was making sure that those large public research institutions and the libraries there were going to be represented. Because this is something that, again, kind of like Damon said, we use GOBI a lot, and we want to make sure that it works for us in the future. I will say the other reason, kind of selfish, I haven't done this kind of product development or vendor collaboration before, and I was really keen on, just learning the process, seeing what kinds of steps they would ask us to go through, and it's been a very educational experience. It's been a lot of fun up to now, into it 2 years, and I'm just looking forward to seeing how it continues.
And I just wanted to mention something, which is that though there are 4 of us up here, there are so many other people who have been working on this project, including 26 libraries in total, and a consortia that we've been partnering with along the way. So there are many other people who have been part of the process of sort of informing the evolution of both the process and the design for the new platform. So from a product innovation standpoint, we knew, as I mentioned, that our success in this project was going to be very tied to working closely with users and getting that sort of incremental feedback along the way. So in late 2021, we launched this innovation partner program with, as I mentioned, 26 libraries, 1 consortia group. The goal of the program really was to facilitate ongoing interaction between the users and our internal teams, which would be the research and design team who played a major part in this. They are not represented here, but the user researchers and designers we worked with were integral to the entire process from start to where we are at this point and will continue to be. So it was really about bringing the users to the folks who are actually designing and developing the product and making sure there was an opportunity for that and incremental feedback throughout. So facilitating that interaction, and also our absolute goal was to move as quickly as possible to deliver a beta version of the product. And in order to do that, it was critical to have users involved in decisions along the way. We work in scaled agile framework. We have many teams working on this at once, so you're moving very rapidly. Having the ability to incorporate feedback throughout the process and really have a process for that is quite important. So our user-informed phases, as you can see, were sort of an explore phase where we focused on interviews, field work, benchmarking, needs analysis, those types of things. A creation phase where we started brainstorming design approaches, leveraging what we had learned in that first phase during the exploration. And that's when we really embedded the UI design team with the user interaction to try to start sort of iterating through designs. And we tested design concepts throughout that part of the process. And then there was an implementation phase where the goal was, as we started implementing the actual design concepts with the teams, ensuring that there was opportunity for feedback and input throughout that process when key questions came up around requirements, design, and so forth. So that was sort of how we structured the program as a whole. It was about a two-year timeline, as I mentioned. So there were many opportunities throughout that time for the different libraries and the staff members of the library to participate in different phases. And we started with an initial concept of what this looked like, but it did evolve over time as we identified there were new areas of need from a research perspective. So we started with half-day interviews with each and every single one of the libraries. Then we collaborated with users on the UI designs, and finally we kicked off focus groups to support the iterative development of the beta. So we'll talk a little bit about sort of the explore phase. So this was really about discovery of needs and needs analysis. So in January 2022, we interviewed, again, each of the 26 libraries and consortia. These sessions lasted a half day, and they had a couple of objectives, but largely to understand the core needs of libraries. And the libraries we worked with that sort of made up that 26 represented different markets and segments. So we tried to get a comprehensive understanding of what the core functionality was we really needed to focus on when building this new platform. So during those sessions, we did a lot of brainstorming and whiteboarding. We started off collecting sort of input around what different platforms and user interfaces librarians and the library staff were using for selection and acquisition of books and related materials. We looked to understand why they were using those different options, what drove those decisions, what they liked, didn't like, and how they compare to one another and to GOBI. So as part of the benchmarking, we talked quite a bit about what was working for them well with GOBI, what was not, and what they were really looking for in sort of a new innovative platform, knowing that we're building something new here. So where do you see opportunity? Where would you like us to focus? So those were sort of the key activities during those interviews. And then from that, we aggregated an enormous amount of data and needs really to start to focus in on what are we going to build first? What is that going to look like? And how do we translate that into design concepts? So we worked closely with user research and design to come up with a couple of initial concepts that we would bring forward into the next phase. A couple of key takeaways from that discovery process I wanted to share. So this ties back to something I mentioned before. User experience is important, and there's an expectation that all modern platforms are personalized and easy for everybody to use. That's quite complex to do, but that is an expectation, and that is something that we've heard quite a lot about, that expectation is for everyone at the library, regardless of your experience, and especially with some of the changes and shifting staff roles that have been happening, especially during that time period and since, there's significant need for that. Librarians work across multiple systems and user interfaces and really, really, really want better integration between those systems and I expect that. And so that was another area of significant opportunity for us to consider how do we help facilitate that. And then workflow optimization and choice. Walking that balance between librarians would prefer a single place to order everything they need, right? To access everything that they need in their jobs, but not at the cost of choice and diversity in content, in workflows, and so forth. So how to walk that line, how to support that need. So those were some of the big takeaways out of that. We also heard from libraries pretty consistently that GOBI plays an important role in this ecosystem as a whole, and it was critical for us to preserve what is unique about GOBI and to preserve and bring forward in a modern sort of experience GOBI's really unique and differentiating services. So those are some of the significant takeaways that we have from a vendor perspective during that. Damon's going to talk a little bit about what his experience was from his university experience working with us on the discovery phase of the process and what they were looking for.
So the needs of my university kind of broke down between what my staff wanted and what I wanted. The staff wants better metadata consistency and better filtering options. I personally want better independent retrospective reporting capability and more information about the publication status of standing orders. So for example, staff would like to see more filterable results and facets. Sometimes when we're doing things by during our selection and ordering phase, that information would come in handy. If we could filter things by licensing options, that would come in handy in our conversations around DRM. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our staff very much wants to have continued ability to use Mosaic with multiple tabs. They use multiple tabs to compare different products and different licensing options, and if they were confined to one tab, they would find a significant slowdown in their work. So that's one thing they specifically wanted me to say out loud here. And now it's and I'm done. For my part, every year we have a straggler project, and this is just an example. We have to go through at the end of the fiscal year and find out all the things that haven't arrived that we were expecting, because we don't get billed for them, and if you don't get billed for them, that money carries over. And when we ask our administration for more money, they say, hey, you didn't spend the money we gave you, and that's bad optics. So if we can find, for example, which publications have it distributed in X amount of time, so we can run that report for our selectors and hand that out, that would be really nice. So that's an intent that I would like to see that. Another one would be filtering by give me a second. So we've got the enhanced capabilities and we have retrospective data aspect of things. So sometimes I need to reach out to our customer service representative and ask them for retrospective data. And in a lot of cases, it's stuff that I can't get, but sometimes it is. And I'm never really sure what information I can get on my own. It would be nice to have more things in place, either tutorials or just an idea of what I can do on my own. I've spent time looking for a report that I just couldn't run on my own. I've asked for a report only to find out that I could have done it alone. And I do like to be able to work independently. And while our customer service representative is always on point, sometimes there's times where they're not in the office or they're unavailable, or I get something outside of work hours, and it's something I'd really like to be able to turn around on my own. So that aspect of things is really important for me as well.
Thanks, Damon. So Damon's representing the needs of his specific institution, magnify that by 27, and then figure out how to distill that into a new product that you're building from the ground up. That's sort of that's the initiative that we were sort of trying to wrap our arms around. And so the work that was done following this piece to really work to distill all of the feedback that we received into something actionable was significant. And I would say I personally lean very heavily on our user researchers to do that, because it takes an enormous amount of expertise to do that and do that elegantly, and they did, and it was incredible. So so following the exploration phase, as I mentioned, what we focused on immediately was working with the user experience research and design team to start to build out prototypes. And we worked to build out 2 different prototypes that we were going to bring for testing. Before we did that, or as part of the process, we worked to look at different ways of solving these problems we heard from libraries. So different approaches from data, from a workflow standpoint, from a layout standpoint, and then came up with 2 different, fairly different approaches and how to address that within the UI. And the designs were low fidelity prototypes, so they were gray, no images, nothing fancy there, but they were something for users to react to, which was incredibly valuable as part of the process. So we focused from a design standpoint for these prototypes on really core workflows. So we didn't try to design out everything. We really focused on the core screens and workflows to support sort of an end-to-end buying experience, because we thought the most important thing is really establish that foundation, that very strong foundation that works for everyone, and then we can scale out from there. We can be agile. That in itself is a very complex process and one that's hard to sell to other people, I will just say. So if anyone needs any help with that, you let me know. It's a hard mental model to start small. So we worked on those low fidelity prototypes, and then we tested those prototypes with 14 libraries, 56 people, 90-minute tests, and those were driven by our user researcher. And he iterated through the prototypes, asking a large number of questions about what worked, what did not work in those prototypes, were needs being met, were we not meeting specific needs, and are there specific areas within those prototypes that we should further explore, innovate on, and so forth. And so that was sort of the core to that process. We had some significant learnings out of the design concept testing that helped us, informed the design that we brought next to usability testing, and really allowed us to create something that was a hybrid. That also pulled in new insights and elements that we had definitively not conceived of before that process. So a couple of things I just want to point out that we learned during the AB concept testing. So librarians expect a clean, modern interface with a process flow that is quick and efficient. And I don't want to underestimate that. And an enormous amount of the feedback we had initially with the design concept and usability testing was that our users were very, very focused on specific goals and tasks for their specific roles. And anything that we could do to ensure that that was as efficient as possible was appreciated. And so that meant few clicks, few scrolls, the ability to easily and quickly scan and compare information, and a single view. These were core concepts that we sort of brought forward into our design process. And they were things that we got only from testing those design concepts with users. And I just, again, don't want to underemphasize the importance of working with prototypes and quickly getting to the point where there were actual design prototypes to share, because it really allowed for very specific feedback from users on not only the features and functionality, but what it felt like. And a lot of it is, what does it feel like to me? Is it familiar? Do I know where to go to find certain things or take certain actions? So that putting the prototypes in front of people really allowed for insight we would not have gained otherwise, and put those designs through their paces definitively. And Morag's going to share a little bit about what it felt and looked like from her perspective, from a librarian perspective, her team's perspective, in terms of working with us on the design concepts, and then we'll talk a little bit about the usability testing as well.
So I got a group of, I think, myself and 5 other folks from the University of Washington together to do this particular user interface design testing. So a little over a year ago in August. And, you know, we basically looked at 4 different pages. One was kind of a model homepage. There were 2 versions, as Caroline described, for the search results. And then the last one was essentially a basic order card page. So kind of, as she said, the different phases of how you would come into the system, do a search and check out, basically. And we saw lots of like in both search result pages. There were also some things that we thought were less than awesome. I think one of the designs incorporated a vertical display of item details, like, you could scroll and see it all, but it was very hard to read, for example. And then there were things that I think we were just kind of outright confused about, especially about navigation coming into, again, it's a very bare bones display, but so what does this label mean? Where am I supposed to go? How do I do this thing? Those kinds of questions. And it was rather gratifying, I think, for all of us in the group to know that, our feedback was taken well, whether it was the, oh, that's really cool, or the, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do now kind of feedback. So as a group, we really enjoyed the experience. I think so far, I mean, we've collectively said it's the most fun we've had in the whole 2-year process. But it really did feel like the culmination of that discussion we had previously about concepts, and what do we like about GOBI now? What do we not like? What new stuff do we want to see in whatever new platform comes out? And again, it was very much largely because we were reacting to something. We finally had something based on our ideas to actually say, yeah, that's right, or not so right. So to get that first idea of like what direction is this platform, what direction is this design going to go, I think was really, really important to us, and we'll just keep tweaking as we go.
So speaking of that, we rolled pretty quickly into the usability testing. So this really focused on a singular design that we were testing with users. And so at that point, we ran 60-minute tests with 15 libraries and 30 users. In the usability testing, we heard quite a bit that we'd sort of hit some marks in terms of the design being modern, organized, clean. We asked for specific words that folks would use to describe the designs. There's a lot of detail I'm not providing here in terms of the specific questions and feedback and what we got out of those sessions and sort of how we use them. But just in summary, we heard quite a bit about reflection on folks seeing that we had incorporated feedback from the first phase of design into the usability testing designs, and that was gratifying for folks. In the design we brought forward for usability testing, we were focused on solving some of those key problems that I mentioned we heard about in the first phase, and so we were focused definitively on ensuring that there were fewer clicks and less scrolling for the specific tasks and goals that librarians had, and that really informed design significantly. We focused very much on ensuring we were providing relevant information at a glance for the specific user within the context that they need, and designing for user accessibility, which has been sort of foundational for Mosaic, this platform that we're building. Out of the usability testing, there were sort of some key takeaways for us, and these were really related to the core functionality folks were focused on and what we were focused on with these designs. Users liked that the search bar was prominent because it's one of the areas they are most using. Search results layout with the filters on the left-hand sidebar, and some of the treatment we provided for sort of persisting filters was felt very comfortable for people, and that's sort of some of the stuff that I was talking about that you don't get without the real interaction with the prototypes. What does it feel like for me? Do I feel comfortable? Do I, with this specific design, would I use this? Most important information was presented in the title card with supplementary information sort of nested, which was important to people. And then also, Morag mentioned it, so in the initial designs we were showing purchase options for different books and sort of a vertical layout. And that was not something that went over well with users. And so we looked at other ways of incorporating that to meet those needs of quick scannability, being able to compare, ensuring that those who need that information can get to it quickly, and change that layout to a horizontal table. And that made a big difference for folks. I think they felt that they had been heard there. We also identified through that usability research that we needed to do additional research specifically around navigation. We heard quite a bit from users throughout the testing process as to where would I find the specific feature or functionality. And that was a bit of a mantra. And we realized pretty quickly we need to do some significant research around this. So we followed up the usability testing quickly with a card sort study where we allowed the users to really define the categories and the logical grouping of features and functionality within. And that is something that we will use going forward as we continue to build out the platform. So that was, again, something that we never would have gotten without that interaction with specific design concepts. Morag, do you want to add anything on the usability testing side?
Let's see, kind of condense a few notes here. I think, again, in seeing the design update, if you will, during the usability testing, again, we really did feel like, our comments had been heard and the design had been modified in accordance. Some of the colleagues I worked with on the UI part of the testing had commented also that they really appreciated some of the other conversation that came up. Again, because you're looking at such a very bare bones design, you have questions about, well, what isn't here? Has it been left out intentionally, or is it just, to save space or whatever? And so one of those things was wanting more data about, for instance, ebooks. And, currently GOBI has a nice little label that shows whether something's DRM free, but we would really, really love to see, the print and, download page limits, for example. That would really help us in order decisions. The other topic we hit on, I think, in both testing scenarios was accessibility. There was a very clear visual focus on one of the search results in the first UI testing that one of my colleagues had pointed out as a great accessibility feature. It really helps you read the page and know where you're supposed to be looking. And in the second, the usability testing, there was an example of the date filter facet. It had a nice little visual slider bar you could use instead of kind of your standard text boxes for typing in your date. The concern there would be for accessibility. It can be coded to be accessible for, say, a keyboard user, but it does have to be coded for that. So just kind of, again, reemphasizing our hope that this will be as accessible to everybody as possible. And that was something that it was, again, gratifying to hear the folks doing the testing were also very much interested in.
So our final phase was the implementation phase. And so during this phase, this is when we started building out the storefront. So we started building out Mosaic in October of 2022, the UI. And during this time, we asked our innovation partners to participate in focus groups. This was voluntary, as were sort of the other phases of this project. We asked them to participate in focus groups that had as a goal to take part in supporting sort of the development of the working software. And there were 16 libraries who agreed to participate in sort of subgroups focused on the workflows and areas that we were developing at that point in time. So as we really honed in on the first phase of development, it was important to have folks who work in these areas really providing detailed feedback as we continued on. And so the goal there was to have a forum to ask for and provide feedback as we were developing. Beth is one of the people, both Morag and Damon also participated, and their colleagues participated in the focus groups. But Beth's going to speak a little bit about her experience working on the iterative development of Mosaic and what that looked like.
So I'm participating in the searching focus group. We started with a kickoff meeting in April, and since then we have been communicating on Microsoft Teams as we really focus on the first working piece, that individual ebook ordering in the Mosaic storefront. Teams has been a great way to communicate. There's been a lot of conversation, not just between us and the product team, but also the focus group itself, the other librarians participating. And I think we're maybe all in different time zones. So it's been really helpful to see that feedback and to learn from other librarians. You know, what concerns do they have? How do they feel about the questions that the team's providing? So the slide, turn around a little bit, shows the three elements of this process that really facilitated our work. That they go from the high-fi designs, the validation, and the iterative process. One question that the team consistently asked us about is how we wanted information to be presented. What data did we want to see immediately? And which details could be in an overflow menu that click into a new window. So this is kind of the common theme that everybody's been talking about, that ease of access and information. So we wanted information up front, and then there was other details that we wanted to be accessible, but they weren't immediate, and we didn't want them cluttering that modern design. So to help our group, we were able to see the high fidelity designs. So in color with images, and that really made a big difference as we kind of drill down into these specifics. And we can see some examples of the designs that were sent to us. It made it a lot easier to focus on these specifics, which is what the searching group was really doing. The communication between the groups has been very collaborative, something else we've all mentioned. And the communication really flowed both ways. The product team didn't just present questions and then go silent. We were getting frequent updates. There had been a couple of demonstrations. So again, you could really see how your commentary was feeding into the evolution of the product. And in terms of validation, that also worked both ways. We were giving feedback that validated some of the assumptions that were coming from these previous design sessions that Damon and Morag spoke about. So one very specific example, which I think illustrates this, is some of the language that was used on the site. So traditionally, when you get your ordered ebook search results, it will tell you there are some purchase options when it comes to the licensing. But the team proposed to us that the term access model might work better. They were open to any other specific suggestions, asking if we had other ideas. But our group really liked the access model terminology. That's the kind of thing that we use when we're talking to faculty, other selectors, and for me, sometimes even students now, as they have questions about why they can get one ebook in a class, but they can't get simultaneous access to another one. So that was a good example, I think, of how specific we were getting. And we've also talked about how iterative the work has been. It's been very smooth, a lot of that back and forth. We just had a demonstration of the working Mosaic storefront for the first time, which was really exciting. It's great to see how far the process has come, how the product has evolved over the last few months. So the searching group has recently been talking about viewing and searching library history and activity in Mosaic. Those elements are still in development, so we didn't get to see them in a demonstration. But I know that will be coming up. We know that we'll have an opportunity to see that as well. And so what's really nice, as we've talked about this real-time engagement, is that I'm doing these tasks pretty much every day in my work, searching for ebooks, ordering ebooks. And so now I'm thinking more about my current workflow. Am I as efficient as I could be? You know, we now have course requests just streaming in throughout the semester. And we have a very strict limit for the amount of money we'll spend on a particular course for their ebooks. So being able to answer these questions, work with the data, consider what's important to me as we try to provide these low-cost or no-cost course materials, has been really fulfilling experience. As everybody has said, it's been really gratifying to see how our feedback's been received.
So we've just a couple of minutes left, so I just wanted to mention this because this is incredibly important to our process. So feedback is a gift. Even negative feedback is beneficial, I'd say, especially to some extent. And what that meant for this process was the ability in the moment to get critical, corrective feedback and be able to ask additional questions in the moment to better understand what is needed and adjust and incorporate that into the process. So this has been absolutely critical to the process so far. So just in the last couple of minutes, I will ask each Beth, Damon, and Morag for just a lesson learned, a sort of insight out of the process before we close. Go first, Beth?
Sure. I think we've already touched on this a lot, just the importance of that open communication, even the negative feedback. We all talk about that a lot when we work with different people in different groups, but I think it doesn't always happen. And people sometimes are hesitant to provide negative feedback in particular. And, online communication can be a little stilted and awkward, even though we've been doing it for years now. But the EBSCO team really created a very open atmosphere. We clearly all felt comfortable and engaging, responding. And I know that's because they want to build a product that is going to be useful and successful for their users. And we've also talked about how product development really needs that input, as mentioned. So that was a really important thing that we focused on.
Mom, you want to say?
So it's been touched on before, but product design truly is an iterative process, and it has to be. You cannot launch a fully fleshed out product and have it hit the market and just be ready to go. And it's something that I didn't really understand. When we started using my ILS, or the ILS we use at my current institution, I missed the design phase and just kind of came into getting the ILS. It was not complete by design, but I didn't know that. And so I was like, why are we using this thing that's not done yet? And through this project, I realized that that's just how it works. And over time, after the product launches, you have users work to figure out what works well, what doesn't, and then the product developers continue that work. So my expectations are way more reasonable now, and I kind of are ILS.
Thank you.
And we use the same icons. I guess for my part, I think one of my colleagues, when I was gathering feedback for this presentation, had mentioned that she learned so much by doing the usability testing, or I should say the UI testing, just from how some of our other colleagues go through the process, look at the page, how they do selection. And I would say that's been borne out both for myself in that same scenario, but also in the focus group on ordering that I'm part of right now. Just learning not just from my own colleagues, but from folks at other institutions around the world, as far as there are a lot of similarities because we're again using the same platform, but there are also some kind of surprising differences, which are also just very educational. And it is rather not surprisingly thought-provoking as far as why do I do things a certain way, and it's just I think overall engendered a certain reflective practice, not just regarding this project, but I think just how I approach our day-to-day work and whatnot in general.
It's great. And the process is intended to benefit not just us, but libraries. And it is interesting that there have been some unexpected additional sort of benefits from the process for everyone. So thank you for joining the session. Appreciate it. I know we don't really have much time for questions, but I'm happy to stick around if anyone has any. to panelists as well. So thank you again. It's nice to put a voice to product innovation and design. I feel like it's something that doesn't often get a forum. So thanks all.
Send me the address. So that can bounce you. Literally work here. Is it hard? No, it's.